Good morning. At least this morning here. Welcome to Rob G. Walk and Talk. Hot beverage. And, let's do an EDC check. We'll start with the old Zippo, the Pirate Zippo, which is almost always in my pocket. 2010. The Broken Pebble of Destiny, the Olight, the trusty Olight. In the other pocket is my EDC, and also the topic of today's video, the Buck 371. This originally, watch check. The Timex Marlin World War I Flying Ace. I don't know if these are still available, although I'm pretty sure Timex is still doing a similar one. They put different Snoopy graphics on these. This was my favorite Snoopy character when I was about 5 years old. The World War I Flying Ace. All right, back to today's knife. I've been EDCing this, and I will EDC this for the next couple of days. It came in the mail Monday. Today is Wednesday? And it was going to be an unboxing video. But, well, that kind of quickly turned into a buck bashing video. And I didn't want to do that. So what I decided to do was take matters into my own hands and see what I could do. So, let's get to the point here. One of the things I like about these low-cost... This is the Buck 371, by the way. I'm sure we're all familiar with this particular model. It's a low-cost, China-made Buck Large Stockman. And one of the things I like about these low-cost China-made bucks, and I have a couple of them, is you can... What I wanted to do is decide whether to buy a USA-made small stockman or the USA-made larger stockman. I thought, well, I'll try the two Chinese and decide which one I like better. I'm going to set this one aside for now. And like I said, this one came in the mail the other day and was going to be an unboxing video, but I was not, repeat, not happy. I'll go over it quickly with you. Out of the box, the snap was poor, to say the least. I'll call the main blade, if I'm being generous, I might give it a 6. I think I should give it a 5. Which I'm told is to be expected on these. The spade blade, in my opinion, is the only blade on this knife with an appropriate amount of snap. I'd give it about a 7. Then there's the sheep's foot, which had none at all out of the box. I mean, nothing. And I've managed to get a little bit. Its saving grace is it's got a fair bit of resistance before it closes, and it does snap close satisfactorily, I suppose. But opening is just... Anyway, with a good bit of work and a good bit of oil, I've managed to get it to the point where it's tolerable. It's not going to drive me crazy. It's not going to irritate me every time I open it to use it. And I've been using it around the house for some everyday tasks, like you would. Opening dog food bags, some light food prep, this and that. The other thing out of the box was it wasn't sharp at all. Barely usable. And again, I had videoed all of this, but it turned into a buck bashing video, and I wasn't going to go there. So what needed to be sharpened, all 3 blades. The sheep's foot was dull and sharp edges. So there weren't sharp edges where you want them, and there were sharp edges where you don't want them. I'll get this all opened up, and we'll talk about the inside. The liners were sharp enough to cut your fingers. Again, both of them, full length of the knife. You couldn't touch them with any kind of force. They wanted to cut your fingers. They were sharper than the blades, and I wish I was lying about that. They were more dangerous than the blades out of the box. So that's where I stood after opening the knife up. But there's more. You see how the bolsters angle back here? Well, each one of these corners was catching everything it touched, and one was sharp enough to cut my finger. It very nearly did. The edges were sharp, uncomfortably sharp, to the point where you couldn't grip the knife properly. So you had sharp edges here, sharp points here, sharp edges trying to cut your hand on the inside of the handle, and blades too dull to do any meaningful cutting. That's out of the box. I was unimpressed, to say the least. However, there's always a however, right? You got to take into account, A, what I paid for this thing, and B, an honest appraisal of how well it's constructed. What do I mean by that? I mean, is it a decent, usable knife at the end of the day? Well, every single thing I complained about was a finishing issue. And I paid about $29 for this knife. So, taking that into account, yeah, the buck bashing video was inappropriate and is not going to happen. So what I did was I sat down with a sharpener and a stone and some 1000 grit sandpaper, and I went over. I spent probably 2 hours on this thing last night, just while I was watching TV, and I sanded all the inside of the edges, and I sanded these sharp points here, and I smoothed out all the wood where it comes in contact with the hands. I sanded the sharp edges here at the top of the bolsters and the springs. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. Again, I understand this is a $29 knife. However, look at the inside of those springs. Let's see if I can get those. Okay, look at the finishing on the inside of those springs. Right there. That's just nasty. And if you think I'm being unfair to a $29 knife, here's a buck. Costs even less than that. So, same manufacturer. I'm reasonably certain that this knife was made in the same factory too. And we could get into that, but now look at the inside of these springs. You see the difference. So, the excuse of the cost of the knife doesn't hold up there. Okay, so I spent, well, maybe not 2 hours, but over an hour going over every bit of this knife that I wasn't happy with, and I oiled the joints and I worked the joints, and I gotta say they weren't as dirty as I expected them to be, and the sheep's foot had a bit of gunk come out of it, and it does move better now. So finishing on this knife was absolutely appalling, just the worst. However, the basic construction of the thing was fine. It really was. The blades don't wobble. There's no play back and forth. There's no play up and down. Is it going to do what it was designed to do? Yeah, now that I've done the last 10% of the work that needed to be done on it myself, I think it'll be okay. Now, it's got that, you know, I'm not familiar with, I know that Buck uses 420HC on the American version, and there's a lower carbon version of 420 that's used on this. I don't know exactly what it's called, so I'm looking at probably a Rockwell hardness of a 55 on this. I'm hoping if, you know, only time will tell, but I'm hoping to get lucky and maybe it's even as high as 57, but probably it's going to be around 55. I can live with that. I don't mind sharpening a knife, and again, it's a cheap knife and I sharpen away the blades. That's okay too. Has it fulfilled its purpose in my world? Well, in my world, it was to help me decide whether or not I wanted to buy the 301, which is the 301. Yeah, the 301, the US version. Well, I'm undecided on that. I think I'm going to have to go the route that I go with case knives and inspect it by hand. I don't think, after this experience, I don't think I want to shell it, because a US-made Stockman is going to cost me over $100 to have it shipped to where I live. So, do I want to do that without handling one? No. I'm going to have to handle one before I buy one. Is this knife good enough? Yeah, it is now. Should a knife lover be expected to know how to finish and sharpen a knife that shows up? Well, I suppose. I grudgingly admit to, maybe if I'm a knife user, I should know how to do all these things. But a brand new knife out of the box shouldn't require any of that. Come on, let's be realistic here. I got a decent working edge on these blades. It's a work in progress because they're not thick blades. Let's compare the blades to their thick blades. And they got a saber grind, not a flat grind. So working that edge down to where I like it's going to take a little bit of time. I don't have any, I don't have access to a grinder or a wheel, so I got to do it by hand. Won't be able to get a patina on that. Oh well. Let's see. Compare sheep's feet. The one thing I do like, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not, it was one of the reasons I bought this knife, was the 3 springs in the back. Makes it awfully wide. But what it does, or at least in theory, is it gives a spring to each blade. Well, it didn't really do me any favors in this particular knife, because even though that sheep's foot has its own spring, its spring is crap. However, I'm okay with the width, and the knife isn't overly heavy because it's not particularly long. It's 4 inches. I think it's 4 inches bang on. This Boker's 4 1/4, I think. Do I like it? I do now. I think when I've made my decision about whether or not I'm going to buy the American-made Buck 301, is I'm going to use this through the spring as my DC as much as I can tolerate it, and it's going to be my gardening knife when spring comes and I have all the work to do around the yard. We'll see how it takes that kind of abuse, because gardening's pretty, at least the way I do it, it's pretty tough on a knife. So, is this a review? It's not really a review. It's a post-unboxing video. Anyway, this is not a buck bashing video. I still love my bucks. But yeah, they're going to have to be inspected by hand from now on, because I'm having the same luck with buck knives as I've been having with, well, again, I don't want to be bashing anybody here. Move this out of the way. Get some oh, look at that. I do have a tape measure here. Get some exact specs on this. Yeah, so we got 4 inches overall length. Width, we'll give you an eyeball here. Now, I've taken a little off. No, I haven't taken much off this. Nothing that would show on a tape measure. Cutting edge, 2.5 on the main blade. I like the size of it, and I really like the girth of it in the hand. I do. I've mentioned in other videos, I have arthritic hands, so it helps to have. And one complaint I have about Schrade Stockman's in particular is how high the sheep's foot rides up when closed, and the Bucks obviously don't have that issue. So yeah, things that I like. The overall construction, it's well made. It really, up until the finishing, it really was well made. The blades are fine. It ain't pretty, but it's well put together. It feels like it's tough. I mean, you know, it's a new knife. All I can say is it feels like it's tough. I think it'll hold up to some abuse, and believe me, it's going to get some abuse. I think that, in the end, will be the final deciding factor as to whether I buy the US-made 301, is just how much crap this thing can take. And it won't be about edge holding, because I realize they're going to be completely different critters. Bucks USA heat treatment is legendary. So yeah, overall, so far, I was, let's say, unimpressed. But I'll admit it's good enough to be an EDC now. I mean, I buy, you know, a bargain guitar online. You expect to do a little bit of work to it when you get it. You buy a bargain knife online. I guess you should expect to do a little work to it when you get it. So, new EDC, Buck Stockman. Oh, let's get a weight. We'll get a weight on this. Good old metric. 84.3 grams. Which is 2.9 ounces. Not bad. And the way I carry my Stockman knives is alone in the right front pocket. So this size and weight is not a problem. Let's call this first report on the Buck 371. Thanks for joining me. All the usual stuff. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular knife. I guess in conclusion, let me say, I give this thing out of the box a reluctant, grudging 6 out of 10. It's still on the positive side, but just barely. All right, thanks for joining me.